me know how I earn a living? This shark, swallow you whole. I value my neck a lot more than $3,000, Chief. Find him for 3, but I'll catch him and kill him for 10. $10,000 for me by myself. For that you get the head, the tail, the whole damn thing.
You yell shark, we've got a panic on our hands on the 4th of July.
Mr. Vaughn, I pulled a tooth the size of a shot glass out of the wreck hull of the boat out there, and it was the tooth of a great white.
A what?
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Love to prove that, wouldn't you? Get your name into the National Geographic.
No, I'm not saying that this is not the shark. It probably is, Martin. It probably is. It's a man-eater. It's extremely rare for these waters. But the fact is that the bite radius on this animal is different than the wounds on the victim.
Get out of that boat!
Well, this is not a boat accident. There wasn't any propeller. There wasn't any coral reef. And it wasn't Jack the Ripper.
It was a shark.
I'll never put on that nice jacket again.
Hello out there in the Jaws obsession. Thank you very much for returning, where we are here to share with you, prove to you, convince you, or remind you that Jaws is the greatest movie of all time. Happy St. Paddy's Day 2023. How about that? This is going out tonight on St. Patrick's Day. I'm wearing my Dacko Nolan's t-shirt, Boston 1966 Quint Tour t-shirt, courtesy of Quint's Sharkin Shack over at Etsy.com. You can follow the link in the description of this broadcast that you're listening on whatever platform you're listening on. John Tedder over there has the first available Book of Quint inspired t-shirt over at Quint's Sharkin Shack at Etsy.com. The Dacko Nolan's t-shirt. As the big announcement was, I was on a live stream last Friday, a week ago tonight, over at Shaun O'Rourke's channel over on YouTube. We streamed live over there for close to 2 hours. And we talked about a lot of different things, but one of the big reveals, was that the Book of Quint is now in development from book to feature film with certain companies in the Los Angeles area. Currently, you can find it on the Internet Movie Database. IMDb.com now lists the Book of Quint as a project that's in development, and the information is available at IMDb Pro. So that was exciting news, and that Super Agent Bill Pettit of the William Pettit Agency, I have been tasked with writing the screenplay to the Book of Quint to adapt the novel into the screenplay format. And that's what I'm doing right now. I'm taking a quick break, but I've been working for 2 weeks now on this, and every spare minute I'm down here. I downloaded the latest final draft. As anyone that's listened to the show before, that screenwriting was what I started writing in was screenplays. It's all coming back to me in 2 weeks' time. I now just started page 91 of the screenplay. I'm on pace for 100 to turn 100 pages over to Agent Bill tomorrow. And I think I'm on pace for 150 by next weekend. We'll see how that goes. But I got a little slowed down this week from the snowstorms that hit the upstate New York area. So I had some extended hours at work, but that's not going to derail us too much. Some other big news that happened after the live stream last weekend, we had a run of books, and the Book of Quint is officially sold out. The Cracked Bean Coffee Roastery sold their last copy. Someone came into the coffee shop and bought the last two books right there on the counter. So there's some collectors we're running around, and that was great to see after last week's live stream. Officially out of books. Of course, we have some in reserve for the higher-ups. We have books to send to them. when the time is right. But now it's time to focus on getting the publisher and for getting that worldwide publication. So anyone that has not been able to get a copy of the Book of Quint, stand by. We will be getting a date to you, hopefully eventually soon. That date will come out, and then we can all focus on that. But for now, I have to focus on converting this novel to screenplay format. Well underway. I'm on page 91. And that is going all right. The process of adapting the book to screen, there's things that you can do in a novel that you can't do in a movie, and there's things you can do in a movie that you can't do in a novel. Really what's going on is trying to translate how best to translate the story and the narrative as it's presented in the Book of Quint into screen format, but also keeping the essence of the book. So I am doing a full Peter Jackson treatment on the Book of Quint, trying to stay true to the book as much as possible. And I want to thank those that allowed me to get first shot at the first draft of the screenplay. I will not disappoint, and I will make sure that the fans are taken care of here, because we want to see Quint taken care of on the big screen, and that is what will happen. In the meantime, I've been receiving wonderful gifts from Jaws fans all around the world. Thank you very much for sending some of these things in. I want to thank Brian, who sent in this metal sign, the Narragansett Lager, Honor the Man, Crush the Can, Crush It Like Quint metal sign here. How cool is that? There's Quint crushing the Narragansett beer can. That's going to go up on the Jaws wall. Thank you, Brian. That's a great gift and awesome. Thank you so much. I also want to thank Keith for sending me the Jaws collage picture, the canvas Jaws collage picture. That's also going up on the Jaws wall. It's great. We have Jaws Obsession listeners sending in Jaws-inspired props and gifts to inspire us to keep pushing forward here on the Jaws Obsession. I want to thank you so much, Keith and Brian, as always. Also, I still want to go back and thank Noel Constantino. One of the things I noticed also on Etsy.com at FMCbuilt at his shop over there, he still has 2 Jaws Orca signs, the Orca serial, the Orca registration number, the MS15LF registration number. So Noel only has 2 left over at the FMCbuilt shop. I will include links to that as well in the description of this broadcast. And that registration number that's made to look like a piece of the Orca that's been pulled off the hull, that's actually from an antique, those are made from antique pieces of lumber from an old fishing vessel. So that actually saw sea time right there. So that's great to see. This is really cool. This is I never thought that we would be so far ahead in the game at this point in time, that we not only have the novel, but it is also in development from book to screen. So with that, I urge everybody, if you haven't heard the live stream, Shaun O'Rourke was gracious enough to allow me the audio for that entire live stream. And that's what I'm going to do here. I am going to, we're going to transition over to the audio from the Shaun O'Rourke YouTube show. You can either listen to the audio coming up, which is the entire interview. We talk about all sorts of topics. We do a deep dive into the Book of Quint. There are no spoilers. We were able to handle the material really well without going into any spoilers. It's one of the more in-depth interviews that I did on the Book of Quint for the content that's in the book, not just the process of the writing and all that. So that's exciting. So we're going to go into that. If you want to watch the live stream, I will include the link in this broadcast. It's over at YouTube at Shaun O'Rourke Show. After the interview, I will be back for some closing comments. Thank you very much. And without further ado, here is my appearance on the Shaun O'Rourke Show over at YouTube.
We are back, and we are live tonight in the spotlight. I've got Ryan Dacko, and he is the author of the Book of Quint. This is 399 pages of prequel to the original Jaws, written by Peter Benchley. And Ryan, you had the opportunity, in collaboration with Benchley IP LLC. They gave you permission to make this book. And we've got some big stuff we're going to talk about later in this live stream. But we're going to talk about the book.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for having me on the show, Shaun. Before we start, I need to thank you and everybody, all the people may be tuning in from the Jaws Obsession, that that unboxing video is what I'm calling the unboxing video heard around the world. Because without that unboxing video, that was where I believe that's going to be a defining moment when someone out there writes the Book of Quint log and they want to document how this came about. That unboxing video is going to be a very important part of the story, because you could sense in 1 6.5 minute video, you could sense the excitement, the passion, and the anticipation all at once. And it's something that I've had, and I just enjoy meeting people. And when they see the Book of Quint for the first time, the smile is what it is. It's that there's something fresh coming into the world in the Jaws universe, and it's inspiring, and it really makes my day. So thank you so much for having me on the show, but also for that unboxing video, because wow, did you set off a firestorm with that.
And I did at that when I unboxed it, I didn't even read it at that point. And then I read it and I was like, holy shit, what am I reading? Dale Smith says, hi, Ryan.
Dale. All right. Hi. So he's up late over in the UK.
Oh, I thought he said he was going to catch that later. I think he hit me up on Twitter. Blacklight, very exciting, is on here. Right. Jumped on the stream. And of course, we've got our guy. Oh, thank you, Jonathan.
There's the man, the technical advisor, the Orca specialist, John Tedder.
Orca specialist.
By the way, before I get into this, I have my Dacko Nolan t-shirt on right now. John Tedder over at Quint's Sharkin Shack, Etsy.com. He has these. This is the first rollout of Book of Quint gear. Like, can you believe it? We're at that point, because that's the best part, is about Jaws fans united. The Jaws fans are the most inventive and creative people. And I've watched for decades and years how people are making alternative movie posters for Jaws, and they're making Jaws memorabilia. But now that we're having an expanded Jaws universe, and now that we have the Book of Quint coming into fruition, wow, think of the possibilities. All that creativity now has a new venue to stretch out. And these Dacko Nolan t-shirts saying Paddy's Day Boston, 1966. Get them while they last.
I think what blows my mind is that as you go through the book,
all right,
and you go chapter by chapter, and you hear the titles of the chapters, you immediately, if you're a Jaws fan, understand the reference. And you just and expanding on things like, it's literally every line that Quint says in Jaws literally has been expanded upon and given backstory. And that is mind blowing that you were able to pull that off. But I want to talk about, like, 399 pages. How long did it take you to write this book?
The book took just shy of 29 months. If you go from all the way from the summer of 2020, then all the way out to that late October, when I said I was when I told Benchley IPLLC that was my deadline that I had set up, was late October of 2022. So that was so the writing was done in about August, September, but then there was formatting, and there's all the stuff that has to do when you do a publication of novels. And then I submitted when I walked it to Ian Shaw in Toronto, Canada, after his play The Shark is Broken. I gave that in November 6, 2022. That's when I considered that the writing was done. Of course, there's still going to have to be a polishing edit when the larger publisher takes hold of it. But
sure,
the writing, the harness, it was 14 months of research starting in the summer of 2020. I did not want to even think about writing until I was in the stories, till I could submerge myself in the water with those men on August 2nd, Thursday, August 2nd, 1945, the last day in the water with USS Indianapolis. And I read 8 different books. I did research, but I was also watching Jaws over and over and over again to make sure that my principle of writing this novel was I wanted to win the hearts of the fans first. That's the point, is that I wanted to show that a lot of the inspirations to the story come from clues in the movie Jaws.
Absolutely.
And
Now,
that,
but I will say, don't sell yourself short, because, you were in the Coast Guard, so you understand the water, you understand the ocean. You are also a deep diver, deep sea diver, underwater welder. I mean, you understand things and articulate things in this book when it comes to the sinking, when it comes to electrical stuff, power lines, all sorts of things that happen. I mean, even, how things rust and how paint, different colors of paint, and like the detail in this book is just off the charts.
Well, thank you.
And so it's not just the knowledge of Jaws, it's the knowledge of the ocean. It's the knowledge of the deep dive that you do in all of these things to make it so rich and to create this world that we saw the world of Amity Island in the film Jaws and in Peter Benchley's book. But what we didn't see was like literally everything else that got us to that point. And this book gets us there.
Wow.
And I remember when I read the prologue, my hair stood up on my arm.
All right. That's what I want. That's the reaction. Listen, it did the same for me writing it.
I can't imagine writing it. It must have been just like so much fun. We've got the UK. We've got Spain.
Well, Alex in Spain. Look at that.
Spain. God, everyone stayed up, didn't they? With Hayden Wheeler again. So
that's awesome. That's great. I'm glad they could show up. These guys, I'm telling you, the Jaws Obsession fans have followed over. These were all sponsors of the book. Many of them sponsored the book, waited months, because we launched the Indiegogo campaign in May. And then there they are. They never wavered, and they always believed that there was something more going on as they listened to every episode of the Jaws Obsession. And
and the Jaws Obsession is your podcast. You have a podcast, you've got a YouTube channel. We're gonna have the links in the comment section below. Everyone go subscribe to it if you're a Jaws fan, or if you're just into movies in general and you want to hear deep analysis of something like Steven Spielberg's masterpiece of Jaws. This is definitely the podcast that you want to be on. So definitely hit that up. The other thing is, my hair stood up when I read the prologue.
Okay.
And then it gets right into the meat of it. I mean, like the first 10 chapters are all
right.
The Indianapolis story. And again, the nuggets that are dropped by Robert Shaw as Quint in Jaws just amplified.
Yeah.
Tenfold. And so in the writing process, did you just say, okay, knock on Nolan's, St. Paddy's Day, Boston? Like, do you just say, okay, what the hell was that? And let me go figure out what that is.
No.
And then you know, like, okay, it was a bar. It was a man who had a bar. So then you figured out how to narratively put that through the book.
Yeah.
And that, the thing is, it's like, it's so hard because I want to say things, but you don't want to spoil it.
Right? Yeah.
You don't want to spoil it for the readers, but you're just like, I can't believe he did that. The whole time I'm reading, I'm just like, I can't believe he did that. And then much like
wonderful.
What Peter Benchley's prologue in the original Jaws had the shark. It was from the shark's point of view as the shark was creeping throughout the dark waters and blah, 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 blah. And it talked all about the sensories, the nerves, feeling the salt water around the shark on the skin. And as he cruised through, you were able to capture that as well during the telling of the Indianapolis story from the point of view of the white tip sharks, which people, if you don't know, the North Atlantic white tip, oceanic white tip is is just a fierce predator.
Yeah.
I mean, they may not have the testosterone levels of the bull shark, but they are systematic. They know, they memorize, they understand.
It's the one shark Jacques Cousteau said he would not trust.
Is the white tip.
Yeah, he had a story. I wish I had the reference here, but he had a story where him and his cameraman were following one, and they were filming it, and it was very calm and collected. So it just took them away from the boat, and then until it got far enough, and then it turns on them, and then it starts getting aggressive and probing, and they had to like really watch themselves not turn their back on it to get back, but it knew it was leading them away. These are very smart sharks. And my experience with them was I would watch them, and they would track when I was on the Coast Guard cutter Polar Star, and we were off of the island of Fiji. So we were coming back from Antarctica. So we hit Australia, then we're coming across the French Polynesian Islands. But we stopped for scientific operations, and we put the beam of light down in the water, and there they are. They were in the shadow of, they're waiting to see what the cooks throw over. They're waiting to see if anything falls over. So in many cases, they're considered the deadliest shark in the world but they're not credited with deaths. When you hear that pilot crashed in the water and never found again, odds are they were taken by the oceanic white-tip shark. The great white shark is just he's the media darling, right? So they right. So they get all the press. But the oceanic white-tip is very stealth, very velociraptor-like, and that's what I wanted to portray, is that they've been trained and conditioned by humanity in the passing of cargo ships, Spanish galleons. These oceanic white-tip sharks are the kings of the requiem area, where they're the requiem sharks. So there's no the food is scarce out there. So when they find a shadow and they hear the engines, they know sounds, they'll track that vessel and wait.
And to hear how, it became a buffet, a horrible, tragic buffet.
Yeah.
And one of the things that struck me, which I didn't know, about the Indianapolis story, you hear about these things. Mm-hmm. I wasn't a deep diver into what actually happened. And I didn't understand the type of situation where, as the ship went down, all of its fuel, which was like a thick crude,
yes,
floated in the ocean. And it was like so many feet thick on the water. Yeah. So the people that were on the surface, their legs, they would pull them up close to themselves, because if they went any further than the 3 or 4 feet or whatever it was of the thickness of the oil, their legs would dangle below that. It's like when you take oil and vinegar or oil and water and you put it in a bottle and you shake it and you see it separate. Yeah. And then if their legs drop below that oil line, that's when they would get taken.
Imagine that. Imagine that, and then on the 5th day, it starts thinning out.
It starts thinning out because it's spreading out over a larger area, so then they become just targets. Boom, 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 boom.
And then when you see the Ventura, the Lockheed Ventura, what's your first reaction? I'm over here, slapping the water, throwing the water in the air.
Yeah, wow, screaming, yelling.
Supposed to do
all the things that attract sharks.
Yeah. So that's why that 10 chapters, I took so long with that, because one of the things that we're doing is we're changing the narrative in that we're giving context to the shark behavior that's going to highlight the subtext in Jaws. So the shark behavior of why is there aggressive sharks? Of course, we don't want to spoil anything, because there's plot elements why there's aggressive sharks off Amity.
Yeah.
But we're also, it's in many ways, it's an educational part of the, if it's going to be a movie.
We'll talk about that.
Right. We'll talk about that. But if that whole section is going to be an educational part, because it's going to show exactly what that, not only was it a feeding frenzy situation, and sharks are extremely these sharks go extremely wild in feeding frenzy situations, but what happened was the elements, everything about it, these men did not know what we know about sharks today. So this is going to be an educational moment. That's why I said this book and book into film is a very important time for us. If we want to educate about sharks, I think the Book of Quint is going to be that vehicle to do that in the next chapter going forward.
Well, we'll get into that.
Okay.
Because it's exciting. There's some exciting stuff going on, guys. Exciting stuff going on.
But thank you for your compliments on the book. That's just wonderful that you had all those reactions, because those are the reactions I challenge every Jaws fan, and especially if there's people out there that are cynical and they're saying, who is this guy? Who does he think he is to write the prequel to one of the greatest iconic characters in cinema history, Quint. Have the highest expectations when you read this book. I want you to have the highest expectations, because I had the highest expectations for me when writing it. And I was not going to start writing this until I was ready to go. And I made sure I did all the research, 14 months of research, until I said, I can write it now. And that's when I hit with chapter 1.
Now, obviously you had a lot of work done during COVID.
Yeah.
So it's a double-edged sword, because it gave you the time
it did.
To write this book. I got to circle back to Benchley.
Do it. Yeah.
IP LLC. They said it was okay to make this book.
Yes.
But it wasn't until after you sent the first.
So
how many pages did you send before they were like, oh,
195 pages. It would be all the way up to chapter 24.
Okay.
Was what they had. They had access to that. And it was the first draft. So I was like, oh man, I'm kind of embarrassed. There's spelling errors. And I'm like, oh man, I did a quick edit, but I didn't really have a deep dive at it. Like that book went through 8 different revisions for what you have in your hand right there. They had revision 1. That was it. So, but they were reading it. And if you read like what you've read, the first part 1, and then they had 5 chapters of part 2. And then with my communications with Benchley IPLLC was that I was very adamant about staying true to Peter Benchley's wishes, not demonize the sharks. And I said that we could use Peter's characters in order to talk about post-traumatic stress disorder and survivor's guilt and real-time situations, real-life situations that people right now are having as they come back from war scenarios, or they come back from just a stressful life, that there's post-traumatic stress disorders are worthy of talking about. And these men were not allowed to talk about it back then.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They weren't,
right.
They had to hide in the shadows with that.
So I tried to communicate that as best I could with the Benchley IPLLC through their attorneys. And then after 5 months, I was done with the book. It was in October, and I
October of what year?
This year, 22.
This year.
I'm sorry, 2022. Yeah.
2022.
Yeah. So it was May when they got the first half of the manuscript. And then I approached them and I said, done with it. I want to send you the rest. And that's when they said, we're not going to stand in the way. We'll let you publish if you give 10% of any and all profits to Shark Research and Conservation via one of the not-for-profits that they had listed. I picked beneaththewaves.org. And that's where we've already generated funds, not only from the Indiegogo and the early book sales, that they've already went to beneaththewaves.org. So anyone that has a book, you've already helped Sharks, because that generated funds to go over to beneaththewaves.org per the wishes of Wendy Benchley and Benchley IPLLC. Isn't that an amazing story?
So I hope that settles any kind of issue that where people are just like, oh, is this just some fan fiction? No, I mean, it's supported by Benchley IP LLC. It's completely supported.
It's completely supported. Let's just put it this way: Benchley IP LLC allowed the publication to go forward, but they attached wishes of them that they could see Peter's characters through the Book of Quint generate funds to help Shark Research and Conservation. Now, one of the things that I keep saying about, and this is the legal term, is that this is an authorized derivative work. You say it right there. It's an authorized derivative work of Peter Benchley's characters and Jaws, the first in 35 years. Right there.
Yeah. And this is an actual letter in the book.
Yep. That they legally asked me to put that in there. That's
from the attorneys.
Yep.
And put in the book.
And that's the thing, is that without that disclaimer, this would have been an unauthorized derivative work. So if you could write something and then you could say, I'm going to publish a book, or I'm going to do this, but without that permission, they made that very clear to me when our first communications, that they've been approached by numerous prequels, sequels, and spin-off series over the years, and they've denied almost all permission. But they wanted to see the manuscript, and it's just they saw something in this book that you saw. They saw something,
and that's
where
they saw what I saw, and they have seen with because you've got reviews of people that have emailed you after reading the book from all over the world that supported the Indiegogo and have received there. And the fact that you did it as a beautiful hardcover book. And it reminds me, I've got my first edition hard copy of Peter Benchley's Jaws. I have it in my safe.
There you go.
I don't take it out of my safe, and it's a hard copy. It feels, it looks and feels, I'm not talking about with the paper cover. I mean, I don't have the paper cover on it,
right,
but it feels like these two belong on a shelf together.
It's something that Robert Shaw himself, I believe, would have been proud to hold, that he inspired this, that it's
it's because he was also a writer and a playwright, and he would have seen the potential that's in here and would have been like, wow, I honestly feel that.
Okay.
And you were able to get a copy. I'm going to pull up a screen. I'm going to share a screen real quick. You were able to get a copy of the book to Robert Shaw's son, Ian Shaw.
What a moment. I was so nervous. I was so nervous.
And explain this picture to the people who haven't been on your Instagram to see. Explain what's going on right here.
So Ian Shaw is Robert Shaw's son, was playing his dad in his play called The Shark is Broken. They did a West End run in London, and then he came over and did a run in Toronto. And his last performance was November 6th in Toronto, November 6th, 2022. And that was my extreme deadline. I was begging the printing press. I said, I need to have a prototype done because I have to deliver this. The Shaw family has to be the first one to read this book before anybody. It was just in me that he had to be. Seeing him in his stage photos for playing his dad was one of the inspirations when it was developing in my head about seeing a younger Quint in the water. I saw Ian Shaw. Do we have any of those pictures of him playing the character in the play, or we don't? I don't have any on my Instagram, no. But if you went to the Shark is Broken Instagram, at Shark is Broken, I think. But that's the thing is that when I saw those, I said, all right, it was clear that it became real. The images became real. So, and it was there was two main rules that I had. Was the one main rule that was forming when I first started the idea of, I'm going to tackle this prequel to Jaws, was that it was going to have to be dedicated to Robert Shaw and Mary Ure, his wife, at the time of the making of Jaws. And the next rule was that Ian Shaw and the Shaw family were going to have to be the first ones to be able to read this book.
Wow.
So, I was planning to go to England and find him somehow. I was writing his agents, and I was like, look, I've got this book. I really have to get it to him. And it just so happened that he's in Toronto and I'm in Syracuse, New York, and that's only 2.5 hour drive away. And I get the prototypes done on Friday, and on Sunday, I'm driving up there with my wife, Tatiana. We see the play, and then I'm going to the stage manager. I got all the way to the stage manager. I said, I have this novel for Mr. Shaw. And they said, okay, after the show, he'll meet you in the back. So I walk around the back, and here he comes out the stage door, introduced myself, and I presented him with the Book of Quint. And
did he have any questions, or was he just like,
he was surprised? He looked through it and he goes, this is a lot of work. That's what he said. This sure is a lot of work.
Yeah.
It was so funny because I was nervous because of the moment, and I rarely get nervous in moments like that. But there was this couple standing over to the side, and the guy was a very big Jaws fan, and he goes, "This is awesome." He goes, "You got to get a picture." And so Tatiana was standing there, and so he goes, "Yeah, let's get a picture." And so he poses with the book with me. We take that photo. And then the guy goes, "Well, did you sign it?" And I go, "Well, I didn't want to seem pretentious." And then Mr. Shaw goes, "Yeah, why don't you sign it?" So I signed it to him, and
wow,
and it was just so cool. It was just the coolest moment. But after that, Shaun, it felt like the weight lifted off of my shoulders, that what needed to be done was done, and now the book was going to go out there, and it is what it is at that point.
I'd love to hear his thoughts after he read the book. I'm sure at some point he might throw that out there. And to get it in the hands of Ian Shaw and just kind of, he understood, his dad was a playwright. I mean, I know he was really little, I think, when his dad passed away, but he understood, he understands that. And as someone who wrote his own play that he went on tour with, he gets it. He understands the writing. So
amazing performance, by the way, acting. He is his father. I can't stress this enough. I hope they get a New York run where he brings the play to Broadway or off Broadway, because if you go and see it, you will see what everyone has seen is that this is Quint, and it's coming at the perfect time. And that's what I'm stressing to the powers that be, is that we have never had a better moment like this. The book's done. We have art. We have a architectural print for what we need to do, and we have a man who is a legacy of the man who played Quint himself. How crazy! It's just, there's something happening, Shaun.
There's something happening. There's something
happening. It's just the energy is there. Everything is at the right place at the right time. We're approaching that glorious date of 2025. It's just, if you see it, it's going to happen.
Well, that's the thing. You always, you have to will things out sometimes into the world.
Yes.
There's a lot of, I want to talk about some things that I feel like aren't spoilers.
Okay. Yeah, let's do it. Yeah. I love talking about the book because I've been, when you write, you're in seclusion for so long that these moments are going to make my day, so where I get to talk about it for a change.
We got Rudy here. Ryan has made all of the Jaws fans proud with the Book of Quint. His weekly Jaws obsession podcast dissects the movie like no one has ever done. He is the Jaws Columbo. Kevin from New Jersey. That's
Thanks,
awesome.
Kevin, he's been right there from the beginning. Yeah, the Jaws Columbo. He coined that. That's great.
So
I'll take that.
Let me get this straight. If you're the Columbo, right? Just one more thing.
That's right.
We got some more people here.
This is great.
McGovern, all of McGovern's, O'Reilly's, the O'Rourkes are all descendants of. All right, I'm not going to say that right. The first Irish king to be baptized by St. Patrick. I think my ancestors came from one of my ancestors was a prince, I think, and he was a thespian, which I find ironic because I'm an actor myself. So, but I think that's where my clan came from. But that's great. That's all good knowledge there. I know I probably screwed something up when I said that, but I will buy the book, sir. Okay. Well, you've got what, 300 printed, but it's being in the process. You have to get shopped to the bigger, to the bigger
bigger publishers. We need a wide release. We need a big publisher to come in and take this. And
you've had some interest from some publishers, and we've had conversations where they felt it 399 pages. It was too much.
There were some the literary agents that we went back and forth. And,
it needs to be. And it could be a volume 1 and a volume 2, but sure. The thing is, every time I finish a chapter, I was like, what happens next? So if this thing left on a cliffhanger, I'd go nuts.
Yeah.
Waiting for the next one.
Right.
But at the same time.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like, if I was trying to get them to just read it, read the book, because I go, listen, I'm all for talking about and having constructive criticism, but you got to read the book. Just give me a shot first. And then tell me what you think should be left out, because I am waging that the way the style that the book is written in, that when you read the book, you're going to say, I can't leave anything out. Everything is key. I can fight for every paragraph, every sentence in that book. I can fight for because I'm my own worst critic. That book was 150,000 words, It's been edited down to 139,000 words. I really wailed away on myself, and when I did the editing and went back and forth, because that I wanted to trim the fat, make it a lean, mean fighting machine, so I'm not wasting the reader's time. Trust me, everyone out there listening and watching, your time is valuable, and I want to make sure that when you invest your time into a novel, that you're going to get what you expect. You're going to get the story, the full story, and nothing but the story.
Well, there were a lot of twists and turns throughout the book,
Right.
and how Quint made it to Amity Island.
Right.
And again, like, I mean, in the book, it shows the progression of that. I don't want to give anything away, how he got there, who got him there.
Wait, when do you think we can actually start talking about that? See, that's the thing. It's
it's like, I don't want to spoil anything.
Right. It's because
it's
right.
just, so good.
It's just that's the thing, is that I had that everything came into play. The pieces started falling in the summer of 2022. I'm sorry, summer of 2020, when I first had the inspiration, and I said, all right, I can do this. The pieces have to be there, those critical pieces. But that's where, if we could talk about what I was trying to do with what that book does, is something completely different, is that it's actually written like you're watching the movie.
And see, that's the thing,
Yeah.
Because the movie is there.
Right.
When I saw everything in this book coming to life in my head from a feature film perspective.
There you go.
Right. So
Yeah.
I could see, even the mannerisms that Robert Shaw brought to the character.
Yes.
As he spoke.
Yes.
You're seeing everything. I mean, it's just like, and even, in the prologue, I can't spoil that moment. I just can't spoil that.
We'll have to do a spoiler episode, but do you see? But you since you've read it, well, I'll speak in general terms. What I have had the luxury of having, this is a first time novelist. This is my first novel.
Sure.
My training came up with screenwriting.
But let me address this question. Does he delve into his time on the USS Indianapolis that sunk in the Pacific? You don't have to spoil it, but that was so powerful in the movie. The first 10 chapters are the sinking of the Indianapolis and him out with all his crew, in these, tight squares and the,
in the floater net group.
in the floater nets, and the sharks picking them off one at a time. I mean, that's where it goes back to the post-traumatic stress, and in the book, when he has nightmares, and his wife will hear the nightmares, or his co-worker later on in the book, Herschel, hearing him yell in the middle of the night, from the fish shack.
That's all actually. And that's all from all my research. There's a book called Only 317 Survived. It's actually called Only 316 Survived, since that number was revised with a recent investigation where they found out that the number of survivors was actually 316, not 317. So Quint was right in Jaws when he says 316. We thought the number was 317 for 30, 40 years, and it's actually 316. So Quint was right. Robert Shaw was right. But how
did Robert Shaw get that number right?
I believe that he was reading another book called Abandoned Ship, which the older number was 316, and then they revised it to 317, and then for decades, and then finally they did a reinvestigation. These two authors, Lynn Vincent and Sarah Vladeck, who did the Indianapolis book, one of them got together with another historian, and I believe it might have been with Doug Stanton, who did In Harm's Way, which is another Indianapolis book, but they all they did a research with going through all the paperwork and stuff, and they found out that one of the guys was on vacation, or he had leave or something. So he was listed on the crew manifest, but he was not on the Indianapolis. So they listed him as a survivor, but he was never on that deployment, so that they took him away. So it actually is 316. So anyway, I digress, because that what I'm trying to say is the book 316 Survived is actually a very fascinating book, because the USS Indianapolis Survivors Foundation wrote to all of the families of the 316 men, and they gave a chapter for each man. And if the family or if the man was still alive, they gave their firsthand account. So many of it, the father or the husband was already passed away. So what they had was the wife or the daughter or the granddaughter or the grandson would actually write an article and saying what their view was. So it was a third person take of what they lived with after the sinking of Indianapolis. So I used a lot of facts that I found in order to create this human side to Quint that we do not know. And that was very important for me because I was watching my children and future generations. They were seeing Quint become increasingly like a cartoon character, you know, the crushing the beer can and the sea shanties and all that.
Right.
And I was trying to say, no. There's a human side. And if we can show this, if we can provide this context, we're going to highlight the subtext in a lot of the stuff that Robert Shaw does for that performance. So thus, you don't need to remake or reboot the movie Jaws in 2025. Just show Jaws, but play the Book of Quint before it. Whoa. Now you're going to actually see the performance of Robert Shaw in a whole new light.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing.
I'll tell you what, one of my favorite lines in Jaws. And that's real fine, expensive gear you brought out here, Mr. Hooper. I don't know what that bastard shark's going to do with it. Might eat it, I suppose. Seen one eat a rocking chair one time.
Awesome line. When
I got to that fucking part where he ate the rocking chair, the shark, and as soon as the character goes, I get seasick, and I'm going to spoil it, but I get seasick, and so I take my grandmother's rocking chair with me so I could sit and rock
and what did
kind
you
of
say?
Against the ocean.
Right when
as soon as he said that, I was like, the fucking rocking chair, and as the chapter progressed.
Yes, but as a Jaws fan, just think about it now. Think about as you read that you just go, "Uh-oh."
That's you know how many moments I had reading this book.
Right.
It was every chapter, every line. You just picking everything.
Right, and that's what. And because I'm seeing the movie play, and I'm seeing. And let's be frank. I'm seeing Steven Spielberg in the back of the theater laughing as the guy brings out the rocking chair.
Yeah.
And watching the crowd go, oh,
because that was such an odd line.
Yes.
I don't believe that was in Peter Benchley's book.
No.
That had to be something Karl Gottlieb came up with Spielberg when they wrote this thing. When they wrote the script.
I'd love to know about the origin of the rocking chair line.
Yeah, because it was so random. And like when you're watching Jaws and Quint's just kicking back, seen one eat a rocking chair one time, you're just like, what? How did he see a shark eat a rocking chair?
Well,
and then
just go read chapter 24.
Your book. I'm just like, so, the beauty about the. We saw, a tiger shark, 13-footer, in the water, you tell by looking from the dorsal to the tail. And when you read the book and these guys are getting picked off during the Indianapolis event and that tiger, I mean, you're just like, it's coming amongst all the Pacific white tips.
Yep.
And they do, like when you watch even National Geographic documentaries, the tiger will be all within schools of other sharks chomping down on stuff.
That was a true story. Jack Cassidy is a real survivor, and he tells of, and I just read that in the last chapter, Tiger Shark Tie-in in the last episode of the Jaws Obsession, that there was a tiger shark that was harassing his group, and they named the tiger shark Oscar. And it just so, and that was what I wrote that right in. That was it. I was just like, okay, that's going to be that part of that element that I need.
What a fantastic, and you lead, and that's the thing. Like every chapter is like, especially during the Indianapolis story, is like a cliffhanger. Like I wanted to put the book down. You read 5 chapters. I got to go do this. I got a 3-year-old running around, screaming, dad, 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 dad. And I was okay. I couldn't because the way you structured it.
Awesome.
You're like, no, I can't leave yet. Let me get through this one chapter and then I'll stop.
Yeah.
And then you'd get to the end of that chapter. It's like, well, now I got to keep going. And so, there are moments where you can put it down and breathe.
Sure.
Those first chapters.
Yeah.
Nah, man, it's so gripping
Yep.
that I can't, and I don't want to seem like I'm just like, oh God, this book really just grabs you. And I don't necessarily think if you're a historian, if you love World War II, you don't have to be like, oh, this is Jaws, right? You can just get into this book on its own.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's a standalone. I wrote it to stand alone. That it has its own feet. You don't need to watch Jaws. You don't need to read Jaws by Peter Benchley.
And see, that's the beauty about the book is it needed to be a one-off, self-contained thing.
Yep.
Because you don't want to tie everything.
No.
You don't want to make it like Rogue One, where at the end of Rogue One, Darth Vader's right there, and then Princess Leia gets the plans, and she says hope, and then the next movie takes up with the crawl and the thing. Yeah. You didn't want to do that. You had to keep it. It was a fine line to walk, because as a Jaws fan, I'm expecting to see Jaws references, but you don't want to have it turn into a cartoon reference cliche train, where you're just spitting out the same lines that we've already heard in Jaws. Yeah.
So there's elements that you've seen in Jaws, like we'll just go to the rocking chair, back to the rocking chair, is that if I could work that in, but when Herschel is seen pieces of his rocking chair that his grandmother sat in on the deck of the Orca, and it's that description to me that I did not plan on. When you're writing and you get, that's why I when I'm to write another book, you almost have to go into training, like you're training for a marathon, because when you go into the writing, you have no idea. I know there's a framework that I'm going to be there, but I had no idea what was going to come out.
But also, like again, you really target scientific research. There are so many studies out there, and there is so much footage out there, which is something we never had with cell phones. Now they capture everything when they're out on boats.
Yeah.
When a mako shark breaches and lands on a boat, there's footage of that. And there were stories going back decades of great whites breaching from sailors and stuff. But it wasn't until, National Geographic actually caught it on film.
Yeah.
These sailors all these years never had cameras to capture. And can you imagine how those old timey cameras have to have time delays? You can't catch a breaching great white.
Right.
And so,
even until it wasn't, right?
Until it wasn't. And even when Spielberg created Jaws, and at the end he has the shark come out, which wasn't in the book, and lands on the back of the boat and crushes it, and he leaps out. But sharks don't leap out like that. And then all of a sudden, National Geographic, you're seeing sharks breach 25 feet out of the water, great whites.
Yeah.
And then you're seeing makos land on boats and flipping, and you're out of nowhere. A mako shark will just leap out of the water.
Yeah.
And if there's a boat around, it just might land on it.
Right.
And so that's where your book for me, because I was going to be two things when I grew up: a marine biologist, because I loved Jaws.
Yep.
Or I could have been an ichthyologist, like for fish, or I wanted to be an actor. That was my thing. I would work in the film industry, be an actor. Those are the two things I was going to be. And so along my whole path in life, I have books on sharks, and I could do shark facts with people all day long. And so as I'm reading the book, I'm going, yeah. And you did your research, but you also, as being in the Coast Guard, you knew the research because you lived it when it came to, the white tips. And that to me made the book too, because again, it goes back to this conservation thing where you understand the post-traumatic stress from Quint, why he kills sharks the way he does.
Yes.
But then there's also, there's reasons why he's killing sharks the way he's killing them too.
Right.
which I'm not spoiling that because someone's going to read that and go, oh,
right.
There's a reason he's doing it. And
that's the thing is I didn't want to to get the Benchley IP LLC permission. I did not want to glorify and the killing of sharks. Can't, because we live in a day where our current times, we understand sharks much more than they understood back then. So how do you take this character who is a shark hunter and create him as a sympathetic and like a sympathetic character, a tragic hero, right? And that was what I was. That was the ultimate tightrope to walk. One side falls on this side, then he's not the shark hunter. If you fall on this side, then he's too aggressive and no one cares about him. The reader doesn't care about him. So I had to walk that line. And in many ways, I'm equating this to the deer hunter. When the book
remember the trees.
Yes. When the book of Quint is made into a movie, we're going to start being positive here. Looking forward. When it's made into a movie, it's going to be the modern day version of the deer hunter. In that the deer hunter was not about killing deer. It didn't make you want to go out and kill deer. And but a deer gets killed in it. But it is a symbolic meaning, the whole one shot. Sure. And that whole thing gave Robert De Niro the way to and he's hanging out with his friends, and then they go off to war, and what happens in the war, and then they take it home and the mental effects on themselves from doing that. So in many ways that's what the Book of Quint's going to do. It's not going to glorify the hunting of sharks. It's not going to make you want to go out and kill sharks. What it's doing is that the shark hunting is now in the background, and it is an overall theme that explains exactly what the book is about. It's not about it. So I'm equating it to the deer hunter, that the deer hunter wasn't about killing deer. And the Book of Quint is not about killing sharks, even though sharks do get killed in it. There's a reason for it, and everything is explained. It's just, I just say, give a book a chance.
Yeah, I mean, and I think, and when you say give the book a chance, lots of people,
Alex in Spain,
have been reading the book, helping out with the Indiegogo.
There's Dale.
Yeah, there you go.
Fellow lineman, Scott, Rockbox Recording. Oh, then we have the ultimate. So
Marty Milner.
Let me tell you about Marty.
Marty Milner.
Marty Milner was the construction foreman on the set of Jaws. Okay, he was way high up there on the production crew, and he did the first. I had him on episode 50 for the Jaws Obsession back in December. He received the book. He reviewed the book, and I had no idea how it was going. That was the first review, really. That was a live review that I was going to get on the show. And it was from somebody who worked on Jaws. Yes. So I was like, here it goes. This is it. This is a guy he's lived his whole life. He was on Jaws, and he had the best words, the best encouraging words. I can't say how big of an inspiration Marty was at that point in time for myself to push forward and to go into the whole looking for the literary agent, that whole thing. Marty is a big inspiration for myself, and he's just had the best words. So I can't thank him enough.
Ooh. I'll be the judge of that.
Oh, that's nice. Oh. Searchable, verified reviews.
That's better than the ham, and I've never said
Booking.com,
Yeah.
That's great.
There we have that's a police officer. That's a retired police officer that actually
from the Syracuse PD, Detective Muggsy McGraw.
So Muggsy. So he came on the Jaws Obsession, and he lent his expertise when we were trying to figure out about what exactly was Martin Brody doing with the different dates in the paperwork for Chrissy Watkins. And if you listen to that episode going all the way back, that would be episode 16, the Jaws timeline explained. We create an actual 12-day timeline that Jaws takes place over 12 calendar days. And we use that. His expertise came in to actually show exactly what are police doing when they fill out an autopsy report, like what he was doing. And I was saying that he was playing with the dates because he was anticipating getting the shark expert from the mainland in. So there's different dates played there. If you listen to episode 16 of the Jaws Obsession, you can find that on any podcasting platform around the world. You're going to hear Muggsy come on, and actually Muggsy is going to come on in the future episode because we're going to explain exactly how Ben Gardner dies using clues in the movie Jaws. I'm not making this up. You don't make anything up. But you just take the movie Jaws, and you see the clues in there, in the screen. You know,
we got Greg here.
Yeah, that's
chipping away at the book.
Yeah, one of the first books he read in a very, very long time, and that's.
I have to admit, you know, it was one of the very first books novels I had read. I mean, I had read the Shark is Still Roaring, which was the making of Jaws: The Revenge, and that kind of like fueled me. And then all of a sudden, you know, this falls in my lap, and I had to jump right in.
It's inspiring everywhere. Like it inspired Greg, it inspired you. For fans to just say, you know what, let me crack this open. Let's see what's happening, because this is the start of it. It all starts with a book. I said that back on episode 20 of the Jaws Obsession when we announced the Indiegogo campaign for the Book of Quint. I said it all starts with a book, just like Peter Benchley. It starts with a book, and then let's see where it goes from there. Because my whole vision for this was a Jaws community coming together to make something happen. So it was a community, a fan base coming together instead of waiting to see what the studio system produces and then either relishing in it or complaining about it. Why don't we all come together and make it happen for ourselves? Get the book out there. And then, as you see with all your photos, the photos that we're putting up from the Instagram page that you're showing everybody, that the fans will stand up there and in one voice hold up the Book of Quint and say, this has to be a movie. And therefore, you have a demand for a movie that hasn't been made yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's wonderful. It was just wonderful to see all of these.
And I loved, you know, you included in the book a sticker, but you also included the other sticker, the Book of Quint, there with him in his sailor outfit. Yeah. And that plays an intricate part in the beginning of the book. And I thought it was I thought, oh, it's gimmicky. You know, this author, he threw in a couple stickers, and there's this one with Robert Shaw with the sailor hat on, and then you read the prologue and you're like, oh, this is part of the book. What an Easter egg.
Puts it right into your hands, right? Yeah.
Right into your hands. And so absolutely loved it.
When you read the Book of Quint, I wanted you to feel like you were in the movie, that it's the experience of reading the book. That's why I've held that back on ebooks and anything, because I think when you hold that book,
ebooks, no, like you can't do the electronic stuff or ebook. People need to hold this book in their hand, feel the pages and turn it, and it is a page turner. You can't do that when you're swiping. It doesn't work. I'm sorry. You need that visceral feeling.
The experience of reading the book.
And I just love how many people, because you're looking at all the different walks of life, and the people that have, look at this, they've got little ceramic collections here. Everyone's sending in their version after, you know, they helped with the Indiegogo and
Charlie the dog,
and just this kind of stuff. And there you are. And see, there's the inspiration for the cover.
There you go.
You know,
that was at the book signing. That was the soft launch that we had for these 300. Remember, there's only 300 books made, and that's what the super agent Bill Pettit is.
Yes, the William Pettit Agency.
Pettit Agency, who is now representing the Book of Quint.
Is representing the Book of Quint.
Yes, and that's why we only have 300 books out there, and we're looking at getting the larger publisher to worldwide release to get this out, so it will be available across and that's when the electronic and the ebooks can all follow. They'll make that decision going down, but going forward, that's what this whole thing was about, was the 300 books, the experience of holding that in your hand. I went down to Lightning Press down in New Jersey, and I specifically chose the cloth. I told them exactly what I wanted to see on that cover, that I wanted that to feel like you got it out of a used bookstore in Nantucket or in Cape Cod. I almost wanted to distress every cover and maybe scruff it up and stuff like it was supposed to be 100 years old, something that you would find in an old Seaman's chapel. And that's the thing.
I think that's great. I'm going to pop something in here. We're going to surprise you for a second here.
Okay. Oh.
Tell me what that is.
That is my 45th birthday. That is me signing the contract for the William Pettit Agency to represent the Book of Quint. And very exciting that they just lined up like that Bill and I were able to communicate, and he sent me the contract, and there I am signing for official representation. Now, this is what we know. That was probably and that's my 45th birthday, is my family. There's my kids and my wife standing around. And what we're looking at here is that I was looking for the literary agent to represent the book. What we needed was a Jerry Maguire. We needed someone that was ready to rock and roll. And Bill Pettit is the guy. Boy, is he a worker, because he put me to work. Once I signed that signature, I had 5 or 6 tasks that weekend that he's going, okay, I need this, then I need this, then you have to do this, this, and that. And I'm going, okay. And it's just, I've been nonstop with Bill. And so that's where do you want to make announce the special news?
Yeah. I mean, the William Pettit Agency, is not only representing the book, but in active development
We're currently working with some companies in Los Angeles to develop the Book of Quint into a feature film.
Yep.
How exciting is that? So do you see what I'm saying? Is that, Shaun, what you did, because Bill found me through you.
Yeah. Bill's been my producing partner for quite a few years. I've known him for almost 20 years, and he's my producing partner. Prior to that, he was my agent. He still reps me if I need that kind of stuff, but we're producing partners. We actually have a television show in development.
Sure.
That we've been packaging, and we'll have some news hopefully very soon to announce to the world for our TV show getting picked up. But he's got multiple projects.
Absolutely.
That he represents. He represents authors that turn books to feature films, and he's working really, really hard, and he's doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes, and he's got really great connections and just all these things. Like you got to thank Jonathan Tedder too, because he put this in my lap. It wasn't even on my radar. I was working on an Amazon series when the book was released, and when the Indiegogo thing was going on, and I was pulling 15-hour days on a television show, and I don't even get on the internet when I'm on a TV series. Right now, I'm in between shows. I don't start the other show for season 3 for the Amazon show for a little hot minute here. And so I didn't even see this book. I didn't even see it. I didn't even hear about it. Nothing. Jonathan throws it in my lap. My mouth hit the floor, and I called my producing partner right off. Holy shit. I was like, you have no idea what's in my hand. Right. And when I got him on the phone, I was like, you don't get the see, but the thing is, I bring a lot to the table with Bill over the years. And so there's other stuff I can't talk about because of NDAs that are going on. But the William Pettit Agency is, actively hustling, talking to some production companies in Los Angeles, and to turn this into a feature film.
But you have to realize that everyone out there listening, what Shaun had just described is that my goal was to go right to the publisher, get it published. Then the book will make noise. We got to get all the Jaws fans to read the book and all that. With what you did, and when Super Agent Bill Pettit comes in, okay, all right, we just jumped over an entire gap where we went over the literary side, and now we're landing with book to film development, as well as now we're also taking care of the publishing side as well, the literary side on the back end. But how fast things happen. We were just talking about that before the broadcast.
Well, I had a conversation with Bill because I worked on a movie called The Last Song with Miley Cyrus, and that was a movie that was written. The script was written by Nicholas Sparks, and he wrote the book. And he wrote the book for Miley Cyrus. And what they did was when we were filming that movie, when it was going to be released, the book and the movie came out same day, which was something that he had not done before, because normally I've worked on quite a few Nicholas Sparks films. I think I've worked on I did The Choice, I did Nights in Rodanthe, I did The Last Song. I feel like I did one more Nicholas Sparks movie. And I'd have to go. I work a lot on movies and TV shows, and so they all start to blend together over time. But I had said to Bill, "There's 300 copies of this, but if we can pull the same thing Nicholas Sparks did with The Last Song, and but we'll see, because I mean, I would love to get the momentum of this book getting out ahead of any kind of a movie going in production. But see, the thing about Hollywood is they like stuff yesterday, meaning they, hurry, just
go.
They want it tomorrow. Right.
I'm feeling
it's kind of like, you have been busy writing the feature film screenplay, the script for the book. At an amazing pace, but again, you understand the book inside and out, and you sent me a couple of pages yesterday, and I was like, oh shit. The thing about you is, like, you grab the bull by the horns and you just run with it.
I live in this computer. Literally. I was doing 10 hours writing a day for the last 6 days and generated 54 pages of the screenplay. Just sent it to Bill today. So you'll be getting that shortly, I'm pretty sure. And then you'll see that it's just, that's what I know. I'm watching it in my head. I know the novel like the back of my hand. So like you said, it's just the first draft. It's gonna, whoever comes in after that, it's going to make its own evolutions.
Sure.
Because that's the industry. But that is to be able to have the opportunity to generate that first draft as the author of the novel. How special is that? So very grateful. And,
I'm interested because Karl Gottlieb, who wrote the original screenplay, wrote it with Spielberg. Yeah. Spielberg knocked out his version. He came in, jumped in, worked on the movie. He's got a copy of the Book of Quint.
That he does. Yes.
And so, I mean, there's twofold there. It's a little nerve wracking, but I reached out to Karl and I said, you need this book, and he send it. I got it. And Karl says, don't bother me until April, because he has a couple other things he's trying to knock out reading wise, but he's going to give like his kind of full review on that. And then you got to remember all these nuggets. Seen Juanita Ruck and Cher one time, all these things in the book that you took and ran with, he helped put together and for the film. So, you want to hear what Karl thinks, because he's either going to go, wow, I wasn't thinking that, but how cool, how this turned out in the mind of someone who is a mega fan that put this book together. And so I'm just really excited that Karl's got it, because,
how could you not? I mean, the Jaws log, right? Look.
Yeah. No, I've got my copy too. It's on a shelf.
We all got our copies.
All got our copies.
But that's the thing. It's like, that's the message. It was just, without Karl's, that Jaws log, and of course the late Edith Blake with her, the making of Jaws, the On Location Martha's Vineyard. Without those two books, you and I are kind of in almost the same age, right?
Yeah, I'm 40. I'll be 48 in April. You're 45. So
45. So we kind of grew up in the same time when shark books were few and far between. If you like Jaws, all you could do is watch Jaws or read Jaws. That's it. But then these two books were there. And these two books gave us alternate angles. They gave us alternate pictures. They gave us descriptions and all sorts of stuff. And then as a kid, you're just going, oh my goodness. So it made Jaws more fascinating.
Sure.
Without those two books, there would be no Book of Quint. That's just, it's
fact. And then, you made a comment the other day because John Tedder has an Etsy store that he sells Jaws merchandise on.
That's correct.
And there's Jaws came out in 75. It wasn't until 77 when Star Wars came out that they started selling action figures for things. I mean,
Right.
you had G.I. Joe dolls that went all the way back into the 60s and 40s or whatever, 50s, but you didn't have anything for Jaws. And it wasn't until recently that they started making the 12-inch dolls,
Sure.
or they started, which I don't own. I never got a hold of any of those.
Right.
But, they didn't start doing things. I remember when the McFarlane, I've got the Orca over here, the McFarlane, display came out. I flipped out. I was like, oh my God, I've never seen anything like this before.
Sure.
And so and this is what goes back to the book, is it's like, there's an audience of people for decades that have not had any kind of, you said the Jaws cinematic universe earlier. And to think that we could have one,
yes,
like
the
the
universe,
Marvel stuff, or like
yes.
like DC, or like there's this out there, like
yes.
there's other stories that can be told other than Jaws 2 or Jaws 3 or Jaws the Revenge. And so
because that's part of it. It's about changing the narrative. And this is the next episode of the Jaws Obsession. I am going to do a whole episode on this, but very quick is that we need to stop apologizing for Jaws. Jaws has inspired millions of people to be shark scientists, underwater photographers, scuba divers, filmmakers, and everybody is out there. And I watch these shows. I'm watching videos of fishermen catching a shark and then being totally humane, pulling the hook out and then setting it free when they would have beat it with a club and hung it up for a trophy back in 1951. It's totally different now, but those guys, they're all our age and they've all been inspired by Jaws. So yes, the short term that when you see director Steven Spielberg apologizing for the abuse of sharks after Jaws, or Peter Benchley's, and he had this ultimate guilt over how the sharks were treated after Jaws.
He did, because there was a culling.
Yes,
there was during the 70s and 80s. There was an absolute culling of great
remember
whites that they had to be
happened.
put on the endangered species list.
Yep. But look what happened. Shark Week comes out, and kids like you and I grow up, and we're fascinated with sharks, and we're doing shark expeditions, and we're going shark diving, and we're looking at sharks, and we're photographing sharks. And now I would have to say there was it's like life. It went through a bad time, but then there's a redemption arc, arc for Jaws. And that's what I wanted to highlight here is that book, the Book of Quint, is it's that continuation of the redemption arc of Jaws, where we're changing the narrative and we're showing that Jaws inspired a host of reasons of why sharks are being helped. And now the great whites are coming back. They're off of Cape Cod. What has happened is that the fascination that was inspired, that the new generations, the guys our age and the younger that you see on Instagram and all the shark photographers.
It's conservation now,
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
I mean, I remember seeing
my Jaws.
Not too long ago, there was a beached baby great white.
Yes.
And this guy walks right up to it, picks it up, and puts it in the water and pushes it because it got stranded, it got beached, and he's pushing it out there. They would have clubbed that thing to death in the 70s.
Yep, and kept it for a trophy. Yep.
Yes, there was that shark, that great white that was beached, that they got a dinghy and wrapped it around its tail and dragged it back into the ocean because it accidentally got beached. Going after the low tide, high tide. It was eating stingrays and got beached.
Mm-hmm.
That would never happen, because if you think about like when Frank Mandas was out doing all his hunting, and he would take people out on what they call monster fishing. I remember when they caught that 16 or 17 foot great white, and it got the Guinness Book of World Record, but then they took it away because they used whale meat
in Long Island, right?
In Long Island off Montauk.
Remember that? We were kids. They saw the picture of that guy with the
and I saw that shark in person.
Oh, you did?
Dead.
How
yes,
cool.
It went on a tour. It was in a freezer truck, and it went on tour, and it landed at the state fair.
That's a famous truck.
And I paid $1 because when I saw the shark, I knew, because I still have all the clippings of that from when I was a kid in a book, the newspaper clippings. When I saw that that was the great white, and that was the first time I'd ever seen a great white in person, and it was the 17-foot world record, although they took it away because they used whale meat.
Right.
You know, I got to see that shark, and you know, that would never happen today.
But see, that's the thing, is that we only had the opportunity to see sharks back then in that format.
Right.
So if you wanted to see a shark movie back then, you had Jaws, you had Jaws 2. That was it. There were no Shark Week. I had to watch Leonard Nimoy In Search of things where you'd have Bigfoot one week, and then he'd go, okay, now we're going to go look at the sharks. And I go, oh, great, this is great. And it was just grainy footage and all that stuff. It's just that gave us the avenue. It wasn't that you were into killing sharks, is that you were fascinated with sharks.
Fascinated with them.
Gave us the avenue to see sharks. So we had to watch Jaws. But that's what Jaws did, was it gave us that base to jump off of as society jumps to another level where we understand the sharks, we appreciate sharks, and we see the beauty in it. And that's what we're doing. We're changing the narrative, is that Jaws inspired people like you, like me, like Andy Casagrande. He says that Jaws was his favorite movie growing up, and he's now one of the lead shark photographers in the world, and he works on every the Air Jaws. It's just
the Air Jaws, the stuff on Discovery Channel. All
those guys were Jaws fans. All those guys. So, Mr. Spielberg, take a bow.
Yeah, right? You know, for a while he would say he wouldn't even go in the water, Spielberg, because he thought they were coming for him.
No, they're not.
But they're not. I mean, the tides have turned.
Tides have turned, and that's where the Book of Quint is coming in. Is it possible to tell the story of Quint without glorifying the killing of sharks? I think it is, and I think the book successfully does that.
It absolutely successfully does that, and it'll absolutely successfully do that on the big screen.
All right.
And so, yeah,
let's do it.
So when you first started doing, was the Jaws Obsession podcast first?
Yes. Well,
okay.
Oh, no, I was in full research phase, and I started writing in October of 2021. The Jaws Obsession did not start until December of 2021.
Okay.
So that was I was already writing, but I said, I need to start this because I have to win the trust of the fans first. But also, it was just in my mind was, Ryan, you have to just get out there and do it, because you have to start talking about it, but you have to tell people. You can't just show up one day and say, hey, I wrote a book. I wrote a prequel to Jaws. No, because these fans, Jaws fans, we are all very, very particular. We cherish this movie.
Absolutely.
Okay? We're not going to put up with, half-baked scenarios. We're not going to put up with that. So when I was going to take this to the fans first, I wanted to earn their trust. So I said, I'm going to start a Jaws podcast where I'm going to talk about Jaws, and I'm going to show that there are hidden things inside that movie. And there are elements there that can be expanded upon to show that Jaws is a bigger movie than we all might realize. And in doing that, I'm going to do a couple 20 episodes, and then I'm going to announce the Indiegogo campaign, and I'm going to get everybody who's listening to go and back the book. And we're going to see what happens. And you know what happened? Within the second episode, I met John Tedder. John Tedder comes into my life. I'm looking for SDU 5E strobe light, the Hooper strobe light.
Right.
We had them in the Coast Guard. Those were our personal strobe lights that you had in your search and rescue vest that you put on your hard hat, or you put it on you'd energize it and you click it on. If you're overboard, you put it on the outside of your vest, had a little Velcro on it, and that's how they could see you from far away. The SDU 5E strobe light. So I was looking for information on it, and I stumbled that John makes the little labels here.
Right.
Okay. He makes the little labels that go on that Hooper has on his SDU 5E strobe light. So when you go out and you can get one of these at like a hardware store, or at a military surplus store, you get these from John. you can have the Hooper one, right?
You'll have the Hooper one.
That's
Absolutely.
the military one.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
get the Hooper one. Okay. So I found this guy, he's making these labels, and I go, hey, I wrote him an email. I said, hey, you mind coming on a show? I got a Jaws talk show, and I'm kind of looking for information on that STU-5E strobe light. I just want to come on and talk about your labels. He goes, yeah, sure. So we'd set up a call, and next thing you know, I start telling him about this project I'm working on. And he goes, this is unbelievable. I've never heard about anyone doing something like this to this level. I told him the whole narrative story. We sat on the phone for like 4 hours. And so,
I know I only did an hour with him on my last show a week or so back, but dude, we could talk for hours, and I needed to his knowledge is so in depth.
It's unbelievable.
With that stuff. It's mind blowing.
But that's what he had, the Orca knowledge, where I only had the movie. I did not have real life Orca knowledge. I didn't have real life measurements. So when I need to know the fuel capacity for the Orca, because they're in 1953 and they're filling up at the Amity town, at the Amity Harbor, at the fuel pumps there, I call up John in the middle of the night. John, how much diesel does it take to fill up the Orca? John's got the answer. So we start hashing out okay, how much does diesel cost back in 1953? And now we can put that in the book. So in the book, you actually have how much does it cost when the harbor master, Frank Silva, comes over and he says it's going to cost this much. That's how much it's going to cost.
That's how much it's going to cost.
I didn't make that number up. John and I computed that number together, and I used John for that. And that's why he's the technical advisor in the book. That's why he's in the acknowledgments in the back of the book. And it would never have been possible without the Jaws obsession. So everything what I was feeling had to happen for a reason.
And then now let's talk about the book and the Orca.
Yes.
You do learn, and this isn't not a spoiler, but because obviously Quint has the Orca when in the movie Jaws.
Sure.
You do find out how he gets the Orca.
Yes.
And how he rehabs the Orca and how he puts it to sea. And it becomes a very pivotal part of this particular book.
Yes.
And it's great. I can't, I mean, even, and again, the detail about what is it? MSLF. What's the number on the side of the Orca? I know it off the top of my head.
I got it in my notes.
You know who's going to put it in there? John's going to throw it in the comments.
Come on, John. Hook us up with that. Yeah,
that's the serial number that the Orca has on the side, which is what you need in order to do sport fishing.
Right.
But you couldn't do that. The Coast Guard would stop you if you didn't have that on there. And the way it's like, okay, the boat has to evolve with the time.
MS-15LF.
MS-15LF. That's it. Yeah. I almost had it. Almost had all of it.
See, that's why I write everything down so I don't have to memorize this.
Yeah,
my head's filled with enough.
and so the idea that kind of detail. Oh wait, the Coast Guard stops you. Well, where's your fishing, serial number on the boat? Whatever
yeah.
I'm paraphrasing, and then, the idea that you got to swallow your pride and nothing's free anymore. Everything's evolving. Amity was just a deserted, basically island until they needed to get power. And once the power hooks up and then things change and you're watching
things are changing.
The tourists come and things are changing and it's no longer fish shacks, it's condos. And like, as you're watching the years go by, because how many years does this cover the book?
It goes from 1945 all the way to 1968.
From 1945 to 1968.
Yeah. So you were right. He arrives on Amity in 1951, and that takes him all the way to 1968. So Cable Junction is already built. The electricity gets supplied by 1951 to Amity, but it doesn't get to Amity Point, which is the name of his town, the fishing town.
The fishing town with
that's Amity Point. And that's actually done from Jaws when Spielberg makes the cameo. And he says Amity Point to Orca, Amity Point
Life Station to Orca. Yeah.
Amity Point Life Station to Orca. So that's where Amity Point is, the actual town over there, because you can see the Coast Guard station in the movie Jaws. It's the white building with the red roof. That's actually Menemsha Coast Guard Station boathouse. But we're using that actually is Amity Point. Okay. The light station, which is the lighthouse. Okay. But then you have the Coast Guard station. They maintain the lighthouse back then. And so the electricity takes 2 years to get across to that side of the island. So it's from 51 to 53. So what Herschel describes is how everything is dark. There's no electricity on the island when Quint gets there. And that's what we're looking at, is that as the electricity is established, you actually see society creeping in. and the island's changing. And that's the effect of Mayor Vaughn.
It's amazing. It's amazing to see the evolution of the island through the eyes of the locals.
Yep.
And so,
and then how they're responding to that, and then of course the charter, right? You have to now you see the local fishermen going, okay, well, we don't need to set our lobster traps. Let's we can do charters and we can make money off these tourists. And Quint has a disdain for tourists.
Well, of course.
Right. Right. And that's one of my favorite chapters, is that charter. That charter chapter is just one of my favorites.
Yeah.
It'd be great to see on film.
Because the kids, and then the other thing is because the
where he's up on the mast installing the antenna.
The people are up there, on the boat, just playing and joking and
taking pictures, right?
not understanding that, like, whose boat they're on.
No.
And that's the thing, you don't stray away from alcoholism,
right, in
the book. You don't stray away from the loss of just people that were close to Quint.
Yeah,
you really see why this guy ended up the way he ended up.
Yeah, and and in doing that, it's also teaching about the history of what happened. Those are real people that died on the Indianapolis. These are real. That the element of that, I don't want to do any spoilers, but that comes up into play later on in chapter 44. It's that there's a reason why when Quint says in Jaws, he taps his forearm and he says, "Mr. Hooper, that was the USS Indianapolis." And then Hooper says, "You were on the Indianapolis." He totally sobers up. And but if you watch when Quint taps his forearm, he looks at the table. He looks over and then he looks down at the wood grain on the table. And he's thinking about someone that sat there already. And he's thinking about something because I believe that was the first time he said USS Indianapolis in 6 years. Because
six years, because you explain how his tattoo was removed.
Right. And he says, "I had that removed." Now, what does it take for
to remove a tattoo?
What was he running from? Why did he remove that tattoo? Don't you want to know? And that's why the book explains it. But it had to be something more than just an ego trip. It had to be more than something. The research that I was doing, I wanted to show the pain that these guys were going through just by remembering their time in the water and how someone would react by removing a tattoo in 1968. Well, and then referencing that, everyone's going, "Oh, you're on the Indianapolis. You were on the Indianapolis."
And now you can get a laser treatment to remove a tattoo. It takes a couple of sessions.
Yeah.
The way Quint removes the tattoo.
Yeah.
Holy shit. We're not spoiling that for anyone.
That's the way I see Quint doing it.
But this guy, Quint, was the toughest man you'll ever fucking run into.
Right.
I had to drop the F-bomb on that because it's true. You will not find a more hardened person.
These guys were really like that, Shaun.
The way I can say this because it's not giving anything away because you got to read the book, but the way his father died, that started everything.
Yeah.
That started the spiral.
Yep.
When he was a younger man.
Yep.
When his father died. And you're just going,
the trauma of that, just that incident. It's not cartoonish in that I didn't want to be like, "Oh, his father died, like his father was eaten by a shark." No. No. It's not like that, folks. It's that there's something, it's so deeply ingrained, the psychological battles, the regret, the fear of regret is sometimes worse than the fear itself, and living with that regret. And that's what this book isolates. It drills down on that. And I had to search in my own soul when writing this. I left a lot of myself on the page because that's how I feel.
Yeah.
That sometimes I'm scared of regret than I am just scared of stepping out there and putting myself out in front of people.
I can't imagine how my life would be if you didn't write this book. I'm sorry. Like,
it's changed. You're saying it's changed. It's changed. Your life changing.
It really is.
Wow. Thank you.
It actually reignited my just reading books again.
All right.
I've got another book lined up, or I'm going to start reading. So it's just more than just Jaws, all the Jaws stuff. Although, I'm a super Jaws fan too. Right. So it's like
maturity of the content. I keep trying to describe. It brings it the maturity level. It opens it up to where people are just you can't. That's why I say everybody have the highest expectations when you read this book, because it's going to meet those expectations, if not blow them out of the water. Because that's what I'm aiming to do. I aimed it to do myself. Is that I wanted to do that because it brings the maturity level up to where Jaws becomes. I liken it, and that's why you've read the book, so you're going to agree. This is what is The Godfather without The Godfather 2. All right, we all know Godfather and Godfather 2. Those prequel elements of Godfather 2 make the whole thing.
The whole thing.
So
absolutely,
if you read this book, Jaws it's enhanced in your eyes.
I never thought, as a Jaws fan.
Okay.
I never thought I needed a prequel. I'm actually I'm the guy that doesn't like all the holes filled in.
Right. Okay.
I'm a little frustrated that a lot of the stuff that's going on with Star Wars, because they just seem to just keep filling holes. Right. Sometimes you don't need to know how this happened.
Correct.
I don't think I ever needed to know anything more than what Quint said in that cabin, in that boat, about the Indianapolis story.
Right.
And then I read this book and I go, I need to see this on the big screen, because this makes the speech tenfold more powerful.
Yes.
But I didn't think I needed that.
Isn't that interesting?
Because Jaws to me has always been a masterpiece.
Right.
I've always loved the movie Jaws in general, just because,
it's simplicity.
It's simplicity, but I always gravitated towards the 3 R's: Roy Scheider, Richard Dreyfuss, Robert Shaw.
Okay.
And it was the characters, because it kind of guided you, because I didn't have a father figure per se.
Okay.
Growing up, my dad was kind of out of the picture, and my mom raised me a lot by myself, and
okay.
And so when I looked at Jaws growing up and always reflected back, I always knew you needed to be Hooper, because you needed to have the intellectual,
right,
the education, you needed to be smart. You needed to be Chief Brody, because these are all the archetypes. You needed to be Chief Brody because you needed to be someone who is honest and loyal and protecting. Yeah. And you needed that in a father figure. So and then you needed the man's man, the guy that wasn't going to get his hands dirty, that could, that would fight for somebody, Yeah. So you all 3 of those archetypes is what made me strive for as an adult. So I've always said, if you took the shark out of the movie,
yes,
and you just had those 3 guys, I could watch a movie about those 3 guys do something else.
Right.
Because you needed the intellect, you needed the protector, and you needed the man's man.
It's a beautiful thing.
And for me, that was always the film.
Right.
The shark was the bonus, right?
Right.
And everything else that came along with it. But it was the rich characters and the stuff that even what Karl and Steven did in crafting the script with the Islanders, just all the things. Hey, I need a red zone. No big deal, Chief.
Right.
It's something
little throwaway line.
You've done it before. All these things, giving all these people this pepper throughout the whole thing.
Right.
I don't think that's funny. I don't think that's funny at all.
Right.
I mean, and the fact that you touch on these characters in the book, and you give them more, to do than what,
because that's
just
the
one-liners of Jaws.
Yep. The theory that thank you, because I saw the same thing, Shaun. It's that Jaws means many things to many different people, and that's why this movie was so hard. When you look at the sequels and what happened,
I'm laughing, but I'm going through the book. But go ahead.
How do you not when you see the sequels and you see what happened, and we all have our attachments to 2 and 3, and then you have 4, but it became a laughing stock. And I'm going, no. Jaws 1 is a very, very special movie. In my mind, it's the greatest movie of all time because it affects everybody in every country. You could go to Japan, you could go to Australia, people will know Jaws. So that's what we're doing, is that the prequel is providing the context to create the subtext, to draw that subtext out of those three characters, to draw that out, even the Hooper, everything. It's just, you're drawing subtext out. So when you watch Jaws, you go, oh, you're enjoying it more. You're getting a richer experience, right? You're getting that full body taste of that coffee, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree 100%. That because I think that's why I love the book so much, because I kept seeing, oh, he took that one line and he made a whole chapter about it. Like the idea that your mind worked that way.
All right. Yeah.
Blew me away. And and the other thing is, because like we know the Orca, we know the boat.
Yeah.
And to know where it came from, how it was launched.
Yes.
How it was, and
the mystery behind it. It's not that he just showed up and he got the Orca, right?
And he got the Orca
going on there. It's a living, breathing thing. It's like there's something happened on that boat. They can't explain it, but it's just
down to the rifle.
The rifle.
The rifle is so important to the movie. It wasn't just, what's wrong with this gun? Jesus Christ!
Right.
Go. He you find out what he did with those things when he was in the military.
Yeah.
Or when he got out of well, not out of the military, but when he was
his throwaway job, right?
His throwaway job.
Yeah, he was hidden.
Oh.
Yeah.
And then
just think about it. Like when you see that in the book, when it says and the rifle, right? And it mentions it, you can almost see the camera pushing in that. Droning.
You can see you can see the rifle.
That's the rifle. That's the one.
That's the rifle.
That's the
one.
So if you have scenes around that, I said that's great. If you could have a scene where the two characters meet each other, but they're holding something that plays such a huge role years later. The
and when the character of Herschel sees it for the first time and picks it up,
you're like, oh.
Don't put it down. Hold it up,
because it's heavy.
It's heavy.
When I was in boot camp in the Coast Guard at Cape May, New Jersey, we had the Coast Guard's a smaller service. They issued us M1 Garands. This is back in 1997. So we would do the push-ups with it. We'd run with it. We'd have the drills. We'd do the facing maneuvers and all that.
Wow.
And so your forearms are burning because you're carrying this thing. It's just enormous.
Well, that explains the chapter.
There you go.
Again, it's you putting stuff in it.
Yes.
That you had personal experiences with. So you could articulate that.
Yes. My sister Tiffany said, Ryan, you are uniquely qualified to take this book on. And it's not that I did not consider myself the best writer, but what I considered myself was I had the experiences to draw on. Like Ernest Hemingway said, you can only write as true as the experiences of life that you have.
Right. And that's why I said it's Coast Guard, deep sea diver, lineman. You're talking about the power going to the island and all this stuff. It's like, oh shit! I saw it. I'm going, okay, wait a minute.
Seeing the truth because I have that,
because you have that knowledge.
There it is,
and that's what. Again, sorry, dude, I'm gonna brag on this thing because I know what's coming. I know it's coming, and it's the future is gonna be amazing.
Oh yeah.
Because if we keep putting it out there and putting it out there.
And I just said the more people read it. Marty Milner said, Ryan, he goes, you just stay the course. Some people take 6 months to read a book. Some people take a year. He goes, but when this book is read, people will start talking about it.
I took a couple of weeks because I have a 3-year-old, but it wasn't that if I put all the time together, it would have been 4 days.
Okay.
But I had to go 5 chapters here, 5,
That's great. But everybody reads at their own pace. But the thing is that I have not received, knock on this wood here, I haven't received one bad review yet. Everybody has glowing reviews for the Book of Quint. I'm so very grateful.
Carl.
Come on, Karl.
Come on, Karl. God leave. That
Mr. Gottlieb, we need that blurb.
You're just a little nervous there, but we'll see what happens with that.
Well, there's always a first, right? But then we'll be batting. That's a good percentage. I'll take that shooting percentage.
But if the movie is made, I shouldn't say if, I should say when. When the movie's made, the movie will need the Orca.
Yep.
It's pivotal.
Mm-hmm.
It's pivotal. We know who has one.
Mm-hmm. We do.
We know who has collected almost every piece to that boat, every nail, every light, every piece of rope, so it's not like it's not doable. Now, I happen to work with some amazing people in the film industry, amazing carpenters, amazing technicians that I've seen build some of the wildest stuff that your heart can desire. It's not that somebody else can't do it, but if you already have it,
right,
it's not going to take much to spit shine, get it running, get it going. And, the movie would be the reason. And so that's exciting for me. I know that's exciting for other people, John. And, cause I mean, why would you not? I mean,
right. Well, I would have to almost assume that it would be exciting for director Steven Spielberg, because we know how distraught he was. He was
very distraught, very upset when the Orca was chopped up for timber, for firewood, and thrown away. As he says,
this is the chance to see it back on that back lot for himself.
But to see it, no, it's not going on the back lot. Never again. I'm taking it.
There you go.
John's got to go marlin fishing with it,
right?
Before anything, but to see it in its phases of getting to the point where it is what we see in 1974 in the when they shot the movie, to see the metamorphosis of things being added to it, this here, that, the mast wasn't on there in the beginning. It's like the movie, obviously like
I want to
shoot films out of sequence. So there may have to be a few.
There'll have to be a few. Yeah.
Obviously, just like, thank God it doesn't have to sink.
Right. You don't have to make a sinkable one.
But you can have a few. You could have at least two or three.
The different stages of it. I wanted to really show that in my mind, when I was approaching a prequel, and I felt that when other prequels were made, let's just use Star Wars, for example. You have to think of the original is the highest, and then your prequel's got to be less. So you got to tone it down. You can't overdo the original. So everything's got to be less. So I didn't even want to have the hand crank on the Orca. I want him to have that in Jaws. So that's why he's using two sheave blocks. He's using his leverages and his pulley systems on the Orca, because he doesn't have the hand crank, because he adds that later on after the events of the Book of Quint. So I wanted to preserve some of the elements of Jaws that you would go, okay, that's the green lightsaber moment. Wow, look at what he has there. If you were to watch them in order, and that's what I wanted to do as writing it. I didn't want it to just be the hero finds his boat and then goes out. It's got to be a series of failures and learning from those failures and add-ons. And then all of a sudden you have what Herschel says is a boat built for a purpose unlike any other vessel, to hunt those things that swim beneath the waves.
Now we talk about Herschel, and to people who don't know, there's a character in the book, Herschel, who's also in the film Jaws, that was never really expanded upon.
Right. And
the expansion in this book is mind blowing, because we meet Herschel at 19 years old in the beginning, and it's just amazing. I want to talk a little bit about some of the illustrations that are in the book. First of all,
Graham Nolan. Thank you.
Okay.
Very much. Yeah.
You can only in your mind think of what's going on right here with Quint,
right
with
there.
this great white.
How can anyone not want to see if that was a movie poster? How could you not want to just go right in the line and buy your ticket?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If I saw that, I'd be like, yeah, I'm there. I'm there.
Right.
There's another great drawing. I'm trying to get to the way. Okay.
Yeah,
so
Graham Nolan is, he was a former DC illustrator. He works for, he has his Compass Comics. You can find him on Indiegogo with doing his campaigns. He does independent comics now. And I commissioned 3 pieces of art for the Book of Quint, and he was gracious enough to to lend his talents to where I described what I needed for the 3 parts in the book. And look at that. It's just, here's Quint arriving on Amity, walking towards the Warlock, which is a derelict vessel at the Graveyard Cove, because there is a graveyard of dead vessels that Quint has to pick from.
And Warlock was the original name of the original boat that was purchased to be converted into the Orca for the film.
Yes.
The fact that you incorporated that as the name of the boat, and the fact that if you drop a few letters and rearrange the lettering, you get Orca out of Warlock.
It's there.
It's right fucking there. I'm dropping another F-bomb.
Right. It makes you want to.
It was so obvious. And I can't remember if they did that in behind the scenes.
No, it was they made the Orca was the name of the boat in the novel.
No, that's right. So they couldn't have done that.
They couldn't have done it. They just got this boat called the Warlock, and Steven Spielberg said, we dropped that weirdo name, and there's the Orca, right? And I'm just going, okay, same letters. So
same letters.
So
you just have to drop the
that
K
Jaws
and the W,
mystery.
And you rearrange the letters, and you've got. So when that was in there, and they're like trying to hang the letters back, and they were rusted, and or they had the green on there and all that kind of, and trying to work the letters, and then Herschel walks up the next whatever the in the book. I don't want to spoil it.
Yeah,
and then the letters have been rearranged. You're like,
you've renamed it, and he goes, "It's bad luck to rename.
It's bad luck to rename a vessel."
And Quint goes, luck's got nothing to do with it.
Luck's got nothing to do with it. Herschel.
But if you think about it, what's that foreshadow? It foreshadows Jaws. What happens to the Orca?
What happens to the Orca? You never rename a boat.
Huh?
That's why the book is
so beautiful. I got chills now. Look what you're doing to me, Michael. Oh
yes, the Orca is a developing character as well. Absolutely.
Yes.
And this one earlier, the mayor is the guy who works, schemes all the characters.
Hayden.
And he has a very intricate part in the book. You know, and not unlike the original Jaws novel by Peter Benchley, where there was mob stuff going on, and there was and Hooper cheated on
This is
but my point is, there are stories going on in this that have nothing to do with Jaws that expand the characters, and you go, oh shit. I had to make a decision early on, and I had to say, okay, what Jaws are we prequeling? And I had to say, obviously, we're just going to do the movie. We're going to stay with the movie. So whatever happens in the movie is what I'm going to derive the clues from. Peter Benchley's novel, they've made so many changes. I had to say, okay, no, I'm not going to reference the novel. I'm just going to reference the movie, and then go from there. And then I said, okay, I'm going to reference a little bit of number 2, because that's Roy Scheider, and I believe that's the proper progression for his character, the insanity. If you see the mayor's performance, Murray Hamilton's performance in Jaws 2, and you read the Book of Quint, now you're going, oh my God, he feels so guilty. Watching this guy totally crumble away his career, his family, watching the insanity take over, because what's Herschel say? We all go a little crazy on this island. Some just show it more than others. Yeah. So the longer you stay on Amity, the more it affects you. And that's why I believe that the Brodies would have left after Jaws 2. They would have left the island. So if you take 3 and 4 out of there, the natural progression of that family would be say, we're out of here. We're done. Because part of the family left in 3. Yeah. I mean, one went to Colorado and
Right.
the other one went to Florida.
Yeah, Florida.
Jaws 3 has a very special place in my heart. I saw that in the theater when I was a kid.
All right.
In 3D.
Okay.
And absolutely.
Ooh, you saw it in the 3D.
Oh, I saw it in 3D in the theater.
Wow. I saw it rented from Rite Aid on the VHS.
No, dude, that was like, and at that age, I guess I was 8 or 9.
Mm-hmm.
I believed every minute of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I had the mentality of a 9-year-old. So yeah, you can look at the movie now and go, oh, it doesn't really hold up, or it's a little hokey, and the 3D doesn't look good because of the transfer, to to DVD or VHS, whatever. But as a 9-year-old in the theater, that kicked ass. That totally kicked ass. So,
sure.
And my only gripe about Jaws: The Revenge, and I know we're going off a little bit here, but was that they flipped the roles. So Chief Brody or Mike Brody was an underwater engineer and welder, and the wife was the marine biologist. Then for some reason they're in the Bahamas, and the wife is a welder and sculptor, and he is now a marine biologist when he couldn't tell the difference between a dolphin and a fish in 3, which is weird in 3 because he grew up on Amity Island. How would you not know it's a whale, it's a fish, this one's a whale.
But you see what I'm saying is it's not necessarily your enjoyment of those, it's just that the discrepancies in the referencing of the original movie
don't make sense.
They don't make sense. So you have to take those and set those aside, and you say, okay, Jaws 2 has Cable Junction. Jaws 2 has a burned out enclosure.
Okay. Don't give too much away. People got to read this thing. But yes, there are things in Jaws 2 that you put in this book too to explain why those things are even there.
Yeah.
And the ballast for the Orca and the Coast Guard construction of the Coast Guard thing and the paint, the red paint. I mean, I could go on and on. But
because think about it. Like you're on an island in 1951. You just don't have material. You have to salvage. It's like, have you ever watched I watch that show, Bering Sea Gold, all the time, where these underwater divers, these underwater salvage divers, they go and they dive and they dredge for gold on the floor of the Bering Sea.
I haven't seen that, but
I used to do dredging, and I used to do underwater construction, and it's a hard life. You're in either hot water suits if you're under the ice, or you're in dry suits. It's just a hard life. But the simple fact is that you're out there in the middle of nowhere, and if your engine breaks down, you got to find a way to fix it. I don't care if you have to do a MacGyver with duct tape and some spring. You got to fix that and keep that going. And that's what I took that mentality into. That's what early Quint would have been like. You don't have everything. You can't just go to a Home Depot. You have to salvage from a graveyard cove. You have to almost go through the progression of, how do I hunt sharks? But how would I hunt sharks in 1953?
Are there any more books available if people wanted a book?
Okay, at the Cracked Bean Coffee Roastery. If everyone follows the link on any of the podcasts that I usually put on, you could probably put it on this I'll rebroadcast of this at their merchandise page, Syracuse, New York. It's a coffee shop that Michelle has been very great. She's helped me out with the distribution, so she's been selling those books on her site. There's also a display inside there if you're in Syracuse, New York. So we only have a handful left. You better order it now because that's it. We only did 300. So we're going to have to wait on these, whoever the publisher is. And then we're going to have to get this wide released because there's a demand. It's just that, like you said, my biggest weakness was my social media. I was writing and doing the podcast and then still researching for the podcast, which generates a lot of time, and doing the writing. So I ignored all social media because I was focused on the material. So what happens now is that this is probably one of the best kept secrets in the Jaws world, in the movie world right now, in the book world. No one really knows about it. And
it's on IMDb Pro. Yeah, you can't find it on IMDb because it's in development. that is exclusive to IMDb Pro, which all the film industry professionals use. I use.
Which was a big surprise to me when Oleg from Ukraine, a Jaws fan out there who listens, he sent me a message and said, "Did you see this? Did you see this?" And wow, look at that! Because IMDb means a lot to me because that was back in the early 2000s, and I remember when we got I got a documentary on IMDb, and it was just like, oh wow, this is great. And now it's like seeing the Book of Quint there. I was just blown away. So that was a big surprise, big bonus. Made my day.
Man, I'll tell you what. We're pushing 2 hours, but I have had a blast.
It flies by, doesn't it?
I'm excited. I'm looking forward to reading pages.
All right.
I'll get the sneak peek at the what you've got so far from the screenplay, but the fact that you've tackled it the way you have, and then obviously, the William Pettit Agency is hustling.
Hustling is right, and I know how momentum is, Shaun.
Yeah,
that's why I'm doing this. That's why even the listeners' Jaws Obsession, you'll see that there was no episode this week, is because I have the nose to the keyboard here. I'm getting the screenplay done before the end of the month, and I will do it, or they'll have to find me in my chair here.
No. We want you to make it to your 46th birthday.
That's right. But this screenplay is getting done this month. Well, mark my words.
It's exciting. It's really, really, really exciting. I know this project is going to be well received. I can't wait. Because at some point, Benchley IP LLC is going to have to get down and dirty into this too.
Yep.
And I think they'll be welcoming, because they've been welcoming with open arms the book itself.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the minute this thing has that kind of momentum and inches closer and closer towards production, Hollywood's just going to be blown away.
I think so. I think this could be the biggest. It's going to be a shot. I believe the potential of this is going to have reverberations on the highest level, which is why when I talk about it, I reference Saving Private Ryan, Deer Hunter, and The Godfather, because that's what we're dealing with here. The weight of what we're dealing with here is that big. And we're going to need all hands on deck. All Jaws fans out there watching or listening, everyone's going to have to fall in and just say, we demand this. And it will happen if the demand is there and if the noise is felt, if the noise is heard. And I want to thank you, Shaun, for allowing me to be on your show.
Absolutely. And if you want, I know this is 2 hours, but I'll give you a copy of it if you want to run it as an episode on the Jaws Obsession. So you don't have to crank out another one. You can just say, hey, this is.
How about that?
How about this one? So I'll download that.
You got me a vacation week. I'll just.
You've got script to write.
That's right. We do.
But we're going to end here, but I'm going to toast you. Here's to swimming with bow-legged women.
Absolutely, Shaun. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And we're going to go back we'll go into the back of the studio right now, but to everyone that was in the comment section and everybody that dropped in and did some super chats, thank you very much. We appreciate all the support.
Yep.
And
Quint Sharkin Shack, Etsy.com. Quint Sharkin Shack, Etsy.com. Go to Jaws, John Tedder. He's got a lot of cool stuff there.
And also the Jaws Obsession. I'll put the links in the comment section.
JawsOB.com.
And we'll see you on the next one.
Show me the way to go home. I'm tired and I want to go to bed. I had a little think about an hour ago, and it's got right to my head. Wherever I may roam, by land or sea or home.
And thank you very much for listening this week. I know it was a short episode, and we had a replay of that interview. Remember to go to Quint Sharkin Shack over at Etsy.com for the Naco Nolan's t-shirt. Also, FMCbuilt for the registration number off the Orca. Those are some great Etsy shops over there doing some great things. Thank you, Noel. Thank you, John. The movie Jaws is copyrighted property of Universal Studios. Any references and sampling from the movie Jaws in this episode is intended to fall within Section 107 of the Copyright Act. The copyrighted materials are fairly used for the purposes of criticism, comment, reporting, teaching, research. The materials used here are protected by the fair use guidelines of Section 107 of the Copyright Act. All rights reserved to the copyright owners. Thanks for listening once again. I want to wish everybody a happy St. Patrick's Day. Stay safe out there. Happy St. Paddy's Day. Wonderful time. Wonderful time. I'm going to get back to work here on the screenplay, the actual screenplay for the Book of Quint, developing the novel into screen format. Exciting times are ahead, I assure you that. Thank you very much for listening this week. I hope to be back shortly. I understand that it's busy. We hope to be back shortly with a new episode next week. Until then, thank you for listening. Farewell and adieu, and please show me the way to go home.
But I land or see your